Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. The cold breeze whisked through the nearly empty streets as I made my way to Lou's Grill, the corner diner where Jake and I had agreed to meet. It had been over a year since we last caught up. The warm glow from the diner's windows promised a refuge from the autumn chill, a place reminiscent of simpler times. Jake was already there, seated in a booth by the window, his figure casting a long shadow on the checkered floor. His smile was as wide as ever, but his eyes, there was something different about them tonight. As I approached, he stood up, clapping me on the shoulder, a gesture of old friendship. "Matt, you made it. Sit down," he urged, his voice slightly more eager than the occasion called for. We ordered the usual, 2 cheeseburgers and a mountain of fries to share. As we waited for our food, Jake asked about work and family in a tone that felt rehearsed. I played along, updating him about my latest photography project and Margarita's new adventures in preschool. It was when I mentioned Sarah that his expression shifted. "So, how's married life treating you, Matt?" he asked, stirring his coffee slowly, eyes not meeting mine. Good, I replied, feeling a hint of defensiveness. "Sarah's been busy with work, but we manage." "Why do you ask?" Jake's fingers tapped a nervous rhythm on the table. "I saw her a couple of weeks ago," he said abruptly. "Oh." I tried to keep my voice light. "Small world." "Doing what?" He hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket. "Look, Matt, I wasn't sure whether to tell you." The air between us grew tense. He slid a photograph across the table, a candid shot of a couple at a restaurant, not unlike the one we were in. The man was kissing my wife, Sarah, her face half-turned, unmistakable in the dim light. My heart sank. "What is this, Jake?" I saw her with him. It looked serious. His voice was a whisper now. "I thought you should know." Anger, sharp and quick, flared up in me, but the weight of betrayal was heavier, anchoring me into my seat. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" "I wish it was, buddy. I'm sorry." The food arrived, untouched as we sat in silence. My mind raced, denial, pain, the piercing sting of betrayal all swirling into a toxic cloud. I stared at the photo again, the proof undeniable, the scene a cruel theft of my reality. "I need to go," I muttered, my voice a mix of rage and disbelief. Jake reached out, gripping my arm. "What will you do?" I yanked my arm away, my mind already turning. "Revenge." The word echoed in my head. I'd ruin her life as she had ruined mine. A divorce, of course, but first, she would have to suffer as I was suffering now. "I'll think of something." "She won't see it coming," I said quietly, more to myself than to him. I left Jake and the untouched burgers behind, stepping out into the chill that no longer felt colder than the ice forming around my heart. As I walked, the outlines of a plan began to take shape, each step on the pavement a promise of the retribution that was to come. The house was silent when I returned, the only sound the soft ticking of the clock in the hallway, a metronome to my simmering rage. Sarah was upstairs, probably asleep, oblivious to the storm brewing just floors below her. I sat in the dark living room, the photo lying on the coffee table, its edges curling slightly as if recoiling from its own contents. The image was burned into my mind, taunting me with its stark revelation of betrayal. Every kiss, every whispered promise from Sarah now seemed a calculated lie. After hours of pacing, a plan began to crystallize. I would confront her, but not yet. I needed something more, something undeniable to shatter her composure. I wanted her to realize what she had lost, and for that, I needed proof beyond a single photo. The next morning, I contacted a private investigator. "I need evidence," I told him, my voice cold, detached. "Photos, texts, locations, everything." "Understood," he replied, his voice as businesslike as my request. "It'll take a few days." Make it quick, I urged, disconnecting the call with a sense of grim satisfaction. Over the next few days, I maintained a facade of normalcy. Sarah seemed none the wiser, her smiles as sweet as ever, which only fueled my resolve. The PI called me with updates, each report a hammer driving the nails into the coffin of our marriage. Then, the evidence I needed arrived, an envelope filled with photos and messages. The intimacy and frequency of the texts between Sarah and him were damning. Armed with this, I was ready. That evening, as we sat at dinner, I finally broke the silence. "Sarah, are we happy?" I asked, watching her closely. She paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Of course, we are," she replied, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. "Why would you ask that?" "I saw you," I said quietly, sliding the envelope across the table. "With him." Her face paled, her hands trembling as she sifted through the contents. "Matt, I can explain," she started, her voice cracking. "No need," I cut her off, standing up. "I've heard enough from what you haven't said all these weeks." "Matt, please," she pleaded, tears starting to form. "It was a mistake. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't change what you did." I felt a cold detachment settle over me. "I want a divorce." Her protests filled the room, but I was already moving past her, past the life we had built together. I went upstairs to pack a bag, each piece of clothing a severance of the ties that bound us. I left that night, the house receding in my rearview mirror as if with it, I could leave the pain behind. But this was only the beginning. My plan for revenge had taken root, and it would grow, fueled by every lie she had told, every secret she had kept. The divorce would be just the start. The chill of the early morning air did little to cool my seething anger as I drove away from what was once our shared home. The last look Sarah gave me, a mixture of confusion and despair, lingered in my mind, but it did not sway my resolve. This was only the beginning of her unraveling, and I intended to pull every string. I found solace at a friend's empty lake house, a place far enough to avoid immediate contact but close enough to execute my plans meticulously. The first step was to isolate her socially. I knew the power of perception and the sting of public shame. I started by reaching out to our mutual friends, choosing my words carefully. "I'm going through some tough times." It turns out Sarah wasn't who I thought she was, I confided, painting myself as the betrayed victim, which wasn't far from the truth. The seeds of doubt were sown. As the sun set over the lake, casting long shadows on the water, my phone buzzed with incoming messages of support. The community's reaction was swift and predictably divided, with many siding with me, viewing her as the pariah I framed her to be. Next, I turned to the financial angle. Since I had managed our finances, I knew exactly where to strike. I called my lawyer, instructing him to freeze our joint accounts temporarily under the guise of financial discrepancies needing investigation. It was aggressive and risky, but necessary. Make sure she can't drain the accounts. I suspect she's not only been unfaithful but may also plan to safeguard herself financially, I explained, feeling a twinge of guilt that quickly dissipated, overtaken by my thirst for retribution. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, I felt more in control. The investigator continued to supply me with updates. Sarah's interactions with the man from the photo became less frequent, his interest possibly waning upon realizing the drama he had stepped into. One evening, as I sat overlooking the lake, my phone rang. It was Sarah, her voice desperate and shaky. "Matt, we need to talk. I think we can sort things out. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." The coldness in my voice surprised even me. "There's nothing left to discuss, Sarah. You've done enough." "But I haven't touched the accounts," she protested, confusion evident in her tone. "Why did you freeze them?" "It's for my protection," I replied curtly. "You've proven you can't be trusted." "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she sobbed over the phone. "Please, let's try to fix this." There's nothing to fix. You broke everything, I said, ending the call with a definitive click. Lying back in the chair, I watched the stars twinkling above, their distant light a stark contrast to the dark path I had chosen. My revenge was unfolding as planned, but with each move, I felt less satisfaction and more emptiness. Yet, I was too far down this path to turn back now. The final act of our marriage, the divorce, would soon play out, and I was determined to see it through to its bitter end. The autumn leaves had turned, their fiery colors mirroring the burning wreckage of my marriage as I prepared for the final confrontation. The divorce papers were ready, each clause crafted to ensure Sarah would walk away with nothing but her personal belongings and her guilt. My lawyer had arranged a meeting at his office. "It's straightforward," he assured me over the phone. "She signs, you both move on." But I had other plans to expose her betrayal to everyone who mattered. On the day of the signing, I arrived early, a manila folder filled with the evidence of Sarah's infidelity in one hand and the divorce papers in the other. The office was stark, the fluorescent lights too bright, casting long shadows that seemed to hint at the dark nature of my intentions. Sarah walked in, her eyes red-rimmed, her posture defeated. She flinched when she saw me, a reaction that fueled my resolve. "Let's get this over with," she muttered, taking a seat across from me. "Before you sign, there's something you should see," I said, sliding the folder towards her. Inside were the photographs, the messages, all the proof of her unfaithfulness. She leafed through them, each photo a visible cut, her face turning paler by the second. "Matt, please, why are you doing this?" "To show you how it feels," I said coldly. "To be betrayed by someone you trusted." Her hands trembled as she looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I made a mistake. But this, what you're doing, it's cruel. You deserve no less." Our exchange was interrupted by a knock on the door. It was the private investigator, his face unusually grim. He nodded at me, then turned to Sarah. "There's something you both need to know." "What is it?" I snapped, irritation threading through my voice. He handed me another envelope. I did a further background check. There's more to the story. Curious despite myself, I tore open the envelope. Inside were photographs not of Sarah, but of the man she was with, photos that revealed him in various settings with multiple different women. "He's a con artist," the investigator announced. "Known for targeting vulnerable women, charming them, using them." A heavy silence filled the room. I looked up at Sarah, her shock mirroring mine. "You didn't know?" She shook her head, fresh tears welling up. "I thought he loved me," she whispered. Realization dawned on me, cold and sharp as a winter's night. Her betrayal, while real, was itself rooted in deception. She had been used, manipulated into the arms of a predator. The magnitude of my own actions, driven by vengeance, now weighed heavily on me. I had sought to ruin her, to make her feel as betrayed as I did, only to discover she was as much a victim as I was. "We're done here," I said quietly, pushing the divorce papers aside. The thrill of revenge, once a fiery blaze within me, had extinguished, replaced by a hollow emptiness. Sarah rose, her eyes on me. "I'm sorry, Matt," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I couldn't respond. She walked out, leaving me with my regrets and the bitter aftertaste of my ruthless pursuit of revenge. I had sought to punish her, and in doing so, I had punished us both, severing what bonds remained with a cruelty that mirrored the betrayal itself. As the door closed behind her, the finality of it echoed through the room. We would part forever, not because of her betrayal, but because of my response to it. In my quest for retribution, I had destroyed any chance for forgiveness, for understanding, for redemption. We were both victims, and now, we were both alone.